All right, the latest rankings from the College Football Playoff Committee are out. We got so much to break down from, so let's not waste any time. Throw them up here. There are the committee's rankings here after week number 11 in college football. As you can see, right, little changes at the top. Oregon, Texas, still there at 1 and 2. BYU slides up to 3, Miami down to 4 after their loss to Georgia Tech. And one of the biggest movers here that we're going to dive into first and foremost is Georgia. As you can see, not in the playoff bracket there. The first team out, sitting there at number 12. But as you know, right, Boise State Group of 5 champion, they jump over Georgia. And that's why the Dogs sitting there number 12 are right now the first team out. Look, here's the reality with Georgia. They're going to make the playoff. Like, there's no reason to panic right now with Georgia being left out. Rightfully so, they did not deserve to be one of the 12 teams after their lost Ole Miss and how they played so far this season. But you look at Tennessee coming up here, playing the 7th-ranked team in the country. You win that game at home, you are right back squarely in the top 12, no doubt about it. So as long as Georgia takes care of business here, you beat Tennessee at home. Tough one here. Tricky game. You know what they say, you never want to play UMass and Athens. You can skate by that one, take down the Yellow Jackets as well. You sit at 10 and 2, you're in the playoff, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So even though you're out right now, Georgia fans, you're smart. You're not panicking, I know, and nor should you. You're going to be fine. Again, your season comes down to Tennessee, but you knew that after the loss on Saturday in Oxford anyway. But one thing I can say about Georgia is about their national title hopes. And that's the fact that they're not a national title contender this year. They're out of that conversation. You know, we talked about it last week, and I put them as one of the 4 teams I thought could win a national title. 1 week later, I am crossing that out. I got a pen right here. I'm crossing Georgia out as a national title contender because, first and foremost, their offense is not good. Right? Clearly, Carson Beck is not a good quarterback. He turns it over way too much. I don't think he can actually read a defense. Anytime there's pressure in the pocket, he just melts down and his brain just combusts. He can't figure it out. He's not good. He's not consistent. Even some of the wins Georgia had this year, he's not been the reason for it. But it's not just him. Like, to defend Carson Beck a little here, he is not the only problem. This entire offense stinks for Georgia. They can't run the ball. They are, how about this? A Georgia football team that is built on toughness and physicality, led by Kirby Smart, is 104th in the country in rushing yards per game. That's been a problem all season long. I've kept waiting for it to kind of get some life and get going. I'm done. I'm not waiting anymore. I'm out on Georgia's run game. The receivers are not very good. They drop a ton of footballs. They give Carson Beck no help at all. I'm out. Georgia's offense is bad enough to where you can rule Georgia out for winning a national title. Part of the reason last week why I believed in them still was their defense. What we saw in Austin a few weeks ago, where they completely took over that game, manhandled Quinn Ewers, manhandled Arch Manning, and single-handedly, despite Beck throwing more interceptions, won that game handily because their defense was so dominant. I was expecting that same defense to show up in Oxford on Saturday, and it did not. It did not at all. I still think they have a game like that in them. I think it could happen this week against Tennessee. But what I can comfortably say now about Georgia as we go into week 12 here is that they are not consistent enough. The offense stinks. They're done. But defensively, they have the talent. They're just not consistent enough at this point to believe in them to go 4 straight weeks in the playoff, play at a high enough level where they can carry the offense to win a national title. It ain't happening. This defense is not good enough and consistent enough. 4 straight playoff games on the road or neutral sites, good enough to carry this team to win a national title. So even though I'm not panicking about their ability to make the playoff, and even though they're out right now, I think they will end up back in and make the college football playoff when it's all said and done, I'm out on Georgia winning a national title. They are not a title contender this season. That is a fact. That's a guarantee. The other takeaways here from the latest rankings here. The rankings matter. And here's what I mean by that. Last week, we talked about the frustration when it comes to the inconsistency of the College Football Playoff Committee. They use certain criteria when judging some teams and then different sets of criteria when looking at other teams. And it's maddening. Just judge everybody the same. And you may have thought to yourself of watching this video last week, Ryan, there's still so much of the season to go. Why are you freaking out about the first week of rankings? It's going to play itself out. It's going to be fine. Here's why those week one, if you want to go back to last week, the first initial College World Playoff Committee's rankings, here's why they matter, and here's why they will continue to matter. Look at this week's rankings, week number 2. What did the committee do? They rightfully moved up 2 teams we had a lot of gripes with their rankings last week in Indiana and BYU. Now this week, Indiana's 5, BYU 6. Here's my issue. Why is BYU behind Indiana? Explain that to me. So anybody, please, in the comment section, if you're watching on YouTube, comment below. If you're listening on our podcast feed, Hick at Night, Night spelled N-I-T-E, tweet me, Ryan_Hickey, number 3, or just go to our YouTube channel, Ryan Hickey's channel, comment there. Make an argument as to why Indiana, rightfully so, belongs ahead of BYU. Because you're going to look at it, and you're going to think to yourself, you're going to say, wow, I can't make an argument. It makes no sense. Because you look at the resumes, right? They're both undefeated, 0 losses. Look at the resumes. BYU has 2 top 16 wins to Indiana's 0. Indiana still has one of the worst strength of schedules in all of college football. But let's actually dive into that. BYU has 2 top 16 wins on the road at number 14 SMU and at home against number 16 Kansas State. There is not another team in the top 25 that has 2 wins over current top 16 teams. BYU is the only team in the country with 2 top 16 wins. They're undefeated. Why are they sitting behind Indiana? I'll tell you why. Because they're behind Indiana last week. Indiana 8, BYU 9. So both moved up because of the losses of Georgia and Miami. But the committee didn't want to move up BYU over Indiana because both won. So the committee is telling you, we are only going to make moves and change the order when drastic events happen. Whether a team loses a game or if a team pulls off a big-time win over a ranked opponent. Now, Indiana's going to get that chance here in 2 weeks when they play Ohio State. And they could absolutely cement their chance, or their spot, I should say, as one of the top teams in the country. But right now, with not that game on their resume, with 0 wins over ranked opponents, with one of the worst strength of schedules in all of college football, why are they above BYU, who has 2 top 16 wins? Because the committee didn't want to make a change. That's why those rankings matter. And that, guess what? It happened to BYU. It can happen to your team as well. You look around these rankings here. If you have a team in front of you that you think you're better than, that you think you deserve to be ahead of, and your team doesn't have a big-time game left, and that team in front of you doesn't lose, guess what's going to happen? Your team's going to be stuck behind that team. And it could be the difference between a home game in the playoff versus being on the road. It could be the difference between making the playoff altogether and being left at home playing in a crappy bowl game. That's why these week 1 rankings matter. That's why the first set matters, because the committee is so hesitant to make weekly changes if both teams lose against similar, win against similar opponents. It's absurd. But there's no justifying, there's no explaining right now why BYU is 6, Indiana's 5. I love Indiana. I think they're legitimately good. But there's no reason right now there's no argument you can make right now to validate them being ahead of BYU. Look, I get it, BYU, you win the Big 12, you're going to get a bye. I get it. You can slide up that way. It's not actually, the playoff bracket is different than the rankings. I get it. But the principle remains the same. Explain to me why BYU is behind Indiana. The more you think about it, the more you realize it doesn't make sense at all. That's a problem. Another takeaway I want to get into here. Speaking of losses here, let's get into Miami. Miami falls from 4 to 9 with their loss to Georgia Tech on the road. Miami, their playoff hopes are fully based on their ACC championship game. If they don't win the ACC, they're out. There is no shot an 11-2 Miami team that loses the ACC championship to SMU is in the playoff. There's no way. Because look at it. Number 1, look at the rest of their schedule here. Can they get a marquee win? Their only ranked win they have right now on their schedule was over Louisville, They're right now number 19 in the committee's ranking. So they have a top 19 win on their resume, nothing else. And you look at who they're playing. They play Wake Forest at Syracuse. Ho-hum. If you run the table here and win those 2 games, which they should, they'll be 11-1. 1 ranked win on their resume. And again, then you'll play most likely SMU in the ACC title game here. Let's say SMU wins that game. Now Miami's 11-2. Now that second loss brings you into the category of Alabama, who's right behind him at 10, also has 2 losses. Ole Miss, 2 losses. Let's say Georgia beats Tennessee. You have then both Georgia and Tennessee in the 2-loss camp. So when you look at Miami, if they lose to SMU, now they're looking for an at-large bid. And now you are 11-2 in a 2-loss grouping with Alabama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Georgia. Just to start with those 4, all 4 of those SEC teams have better wins, better resumes than anything Miami has. They can't stack up. So if you're Miami right now and you lose the ACC title game, you're not getting in over any of those teams. Notre Dame, if they were on the table, they're in over you. Like, you look right now, the door on your playoff hopes are slammed shut if you lose to SMU and Charlotte in a few weeks. That's why Miami, their playoff hopes are contingent on the ACC championship game. It's a must-win for them. It is a must-win. That's why that loss to Georgia Tech is so impactful. If they were 12-0, if they won this game, won the last 2, and they were 12-0 going to Charlotte, and they lost to SMU, they still have a rightful claim, and I think they have a strong case and would get in the college football playoff. But now, again, when you add that second loss, and now you invite in, okay, Alabama and Georgia and Tennessee and Ole Miss, and wow, look at those teams that have similar, at least similar records. Let's kind of put them head to head. Miami loses head to head against all 4 of those SEC teams. They're out. They're out. So that's why now going forward, if you're Miami, it's a must-win. You have to win out, otherwise your playoff hopes are dashed. It is ACC championship or bust for Miami here in terms of their playoff hopes. Last thing I want to get into before I give you my rankings, because the committee rankings, again, I disagree with. For someone who watches sport every single week, I want my rankings and I want the true rankings to reflect on what you see each and every Saturday. I think my rankings do that. I'll put them up here to compare to what the College Football Playoff Committee did. But last thing I want to bring attention to, and it's not rankings specific, it is now bracket specific. So I'll put the bracket back up to have you take a look at it here. If you're the Big Ten right now, I think it's very fair to say this year's national championship is running through the Big Ten Conference. Hear me out. Let's look at it here. Number 1, Oregon, best team in college football. Hands down, not even a debate. They are the most consistent. They are insanely talented. They have proven it on the field against Ohio State. They're the best team in college football, no doubt about it. But look at the rest. And look at the first round matchups here specifically. You have right now 3 of the 4 first round games played on campus at Big Ten stadiums. Indiana hosting Alabama, Penn State hosting Ole Miss, Ohio State hosting Boise State. You look at how this plays out here, where let's get nuts here. Let's get crazy. Let's say Indiana goes into the shoe 2 weeks from now and upsets Ohio State. They take them down. Is Ohio State falling that much, losing to, right now, the number 5 team in the country? I don't think so. If anything, maybe Indiana and Ohio State swap. Or maybe Indiana jumps from 5 to 3 and Ohio State goes from 2 to 5. Either way, you have to think, okay, the winner of the Big Ten title game, clearly, obviously, right, has the bye. The loser, you feel very confident, and most likely probably is the 5 seed. I mean, if Indiana rolls into Indianapolis at 12-0 and loses to Oregon, and they're 12-1, they're going to be the 5. If Ohio State loses to Oregon again, I think they have 5, maybe 6 seed. Either way, you get a home playoff game. So it could absolutely shake out here where you have Ohio State in the first round hosting a playoff game, Penn State hosting a playoff game if they win out, Indiana hosting a playoff game, along with obviously Oregon having the bye. 3 of the 4 home playoff games will be in Big Ten stadiums, facing what most likely will be SEC teams. So now you have to, you rip Alabama out of the South and you put them in a Northeast or Northern environment. You take, Tennessee or Georgia or Ole Miss, you rip them out of the South and you put them in Columbus, State College, Bloomington. Those are tough games to win, man. Those are really tough games. I bet you right now, if 3 Big Ten teams host playoff games, I bet you at least 2 win. At least 2 win. So now all of a sudden you look at, okay, 2 Big Ten teams win an opening weekend. Oregon right now is the 3rd team that you're looking at here as well. 3 teams from the Big Ten in the Final 8. And you look again where a Big Ten team could face BYU, Big Ten team could face Miami, Big Ten team could face SMU. They could be favored in those games. Oregon, you got to think, will be favored in their game. You could be looking at 3 Big Ten teams favored to go to the Final Four. The college football playoff national title this year runs through the Big Ten. You're going to have bare minimum, again, assuming no chaos here, even if Ohio State does beat Indiana and Indiana falls, you're going to have Ohio State and Penn State hosting playoff games. You're going to have to go to Columbus, go to State College. That's going to be tough. I don't care who you are. Because even if you're Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, they've shown vulnerabilities, especially on the road. Alabama's 2 losses on the road. Georgia's 2 losses on the road. Ole Miss has lost already once on the road. It's going to be tough. Those are going to be hostile environments. So now all of a sudden you look at the importance of seeding here. The Big Ten has 4 of the top 5 teams in the country, ranked in the top 5. Obviously, way to be redundant there, Ryan. And it's depending on how if Indiana is able to pull off an upset over Ohio State, there is a real path for 3 Big Ten teams hosting first-round playoff games. The national title is going through the Big Ten. You're going to have to rip it out of their hands in order to get it this year. We got a few weeks to go here, but man, oh man, if you're a Big Ten fan, it's looking promising right now that you're going to have a solid path right now to making a run here. Making the run in the college football playoff. All right, to wrap up here, appreciate you watching. Let's throw up here my rankings, my top 12, or really actually open it up here to 13. Because, again, the College Football Playoff Committee does one thing. I don't trust that they actually use the results on the field to determine their rankings. I do. That's why I want to give you some real rankings here. The Hickey 12 for week number 11 going to week number 12. Oregon, I have at number 1. Ohio State at number 2. I think, again, BYU deserves to be 3. The fact that they are, to me, or the fact that they are 6, I should say, in the College Football Playoff rankings, I think is egregious. They're undefeated. I don't care that they played Utah tough on the road. Again, everybody this year has looked vulnerable. Everybody's had close calls one way or another. BYU in a rivalry game on the road had a tough one. Okay, they won. And again, you have 2 top 16 victories. That, to me, is good enough to be 3rd. I think Indiana, with their dominance right now, would be 4. I put Penn State, again, ahead of Texas like we did last week because I think the resumes are identical. Penn State and Texas. When you look at it, neither right now has a top 25 victory on their resume. And I think Penn State's loss is a lot more impressive right now than Texas's loss. Tennessee at 7, big game this weekend. I would slide Alabama up to 8. Committee barely moved them. The committee moved Alabama 1 spot from 11 to 10 for their absolute bludgeoning of LSU, who, by the way, is 13. That's what... Oh, road winning against a top 15 team can get you moved up 1 spot? Not my rankings. Again, this is why these are the real rankings here. I have them at 8 going to this weekend, followed by Notre Dame 9. I dropped Miami from, they were from 8 for me. I dropped them down to 10 here. Ole Miss 11. I put Georgia 12, just like the committee did. And I have SMU above Boise State. I have SMU at 13. I think I like their resume better here than what the Broncos have. First 3 out, Boise State. But again, they're in, but just for the rankings here, I guess, if you will. Boise State to me is an outside looking in, but again, Group of 5 champ, they're in. Texas A&M's right behind them. Again, I still like the Aggies here a lot. I think they're a dangerous team. That Texas game at the end of the season is going to be unbelievable. I cannot wait. I already have it circled on the calendar. And then finally, Colorado. Props to Colorado, man. Deion Sanders. I doubted them big time. I thought there was no shot in hell this team would be competitive this year. I thought the same problems that plagued them last year plague them again this year. I thought you're looking at another 4 or 5 win season. The Buffs have been good. Their defense has turned around. They are physical. They're actually getting stops. The offensive line still not great, but again, you have some great skill talent on the outside that they're taking advantage of. Colorado's good, man. Again, I'm not going to get too crazy here because they've played nobody. The most impressive win they have is probably their last winning over Texas Tech on the road. But North Dakota State's in the argument here, or in the discussion, I should say, for one of their best wins of the season. So Colorado has to prove it now, that they won't the rest of the season. The toughest game will be BYU if they make it and win out here in the Big 12 title game. But Colorado's been at 7-2 a lot better than anything I could have ever anticipated so far in year 2 under Deion Sanders. Props to you, Coach Prime. I doubted you, and so far you are proving me wrong. All right, that'll do it for this week 12, week 2 edition of the reaction to the College Football Playoff Rankings. Again, appreciate you watching, appreciate you listening. Make sure you're subscribing wherever you are, whether it's on YouTube, Ryan Hickey, if you're listening. Appreciate that too, love it. Make sure you do check us out, Hick at Night Podcast, Night spelled Nite. Make sure you do subscribe wherever you do get your pods. Make sure you keep an eye out. We got Hick's 5-minute picks. Big preview for every single or at least for the big games in college football every single week. We got that dropping on Wednesday, so keep your eyes out for that. Appreciate talking to you. Let me know if you disagree with anything in the comments. Well, let's fight. Let's talk. Let's talk. I'm not gonna hide in the comments. I'm not gonna hide behind the video and not respond to anybody. You want to come after me? Please do it. I'm here. Let's have a discussion. Talk to you soon. Appreciate you watching and listening. I also don't know how to end this video, so we're just gonna end it right now. Great job, Brian.